yesterday's attacks, among other things.
Some say that he does have ties to Muslim extremists. I don't know.
After 20 years in the country, the United States withdrew its forces from Afghanistan. US President Joe Biden announced that the remaining US servicemen and women would be gone by September 11th.
The plan has long been in together, out together. US troops, as well as forces deployed by our NATO allies and operational partners, will be out of Afghanistan before we mark the 20th anniversary of that heinous attack on September 11th.
The date was significant, and although the withdrawal was that, still what Biden said was exactly 20 years after the 9/11 attacks on America, which Washington claimed was planned and directed from Afghanistan.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. These carefully targeted actions are designed to disrupt the use of Afghanistan as a terrorist base of operations and to attack the military capability of the Taliban regime.
American troops invaded Afghanistan looking for al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, claiming the government of Afghanistan was sheltering him. They promised to drive out both the Taliban and al-Qaeda. 20 long years later, the US war in Afghanistan is officially over, and while the focus is presently on how the Biden administration prosecuted the chaotic withdrawal, those false assurances are merely the latest in the long series that has marked America's longest war. In fact, with the invasion now over, it's worth taking stock of just how it was sold to not only the American people, but to the rest of the world. The big upshot of the present situation is that the Taliban, which the United States went to war to uproot, is back in charge in the country immediately upon the withdrawal. That's something Washington had promised time and time again wouldn't happen. In fact, in the early years of the invasion, the Bush administration spoke of the Taliban as if it had been utterly obliterated. It repeatedly used the word eliminated. In April 2002, Condoleezza Rice, then White House National Security Advisor, said, "With the Taliban eliminated and al-Qaeda badly damaged, we have moved into the second stage of our war on terror." In November 2003, Bush used similar language. In September 2002, declared that as a result of the United States military, the Taliban no longer is in existence. Even at the time, this flew in the face of the evidence, given that civilians and foreign troops were still being attacked and killed. By 2008, what Bush said was still the case, so the outgoing president claimed he never said the Taliban was eliminated.
The Taliban was brutalizing the people of Afghanistan, and they're not in power. And I just cited the progress that is undeniable. Now, is there more work to be done? You bet. I never said the Taliban was eliminated. I said they were removed from power.
Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair mistake as well. In 2012, when he was asked whether the Taliban is able to come back to power after a US withdrawal, he said it's unlikely. Now, some might argue that everyone might make wrong predictions, but it was about the lives of millions in Afghanistan. So there's a huge difference between a president talking with such certainty and an ordinary man. The cost of this 20-year military invasion has been astronomically high, in lives, in livelihoods, and in money. The US Central Command Combined Air Operations Center says the US Air Force dropped a record 7,423 bombs on Afghanistan. This is more than at any time in 10 years. Over 2,300 US soldiers were killed and more than 20,000 injured. But it is the Afghans themselves who have borne the brunt of the casualties, with over 60,000 members of the security forces killed and as many as 170,000 civilians. The estimated financial cost to the US taxpayer is close to a staggering $1 trillion. So the awkward question that has to be asked is, was it all worth it? The truth is, during 2 decades of occupation, the US achieved very little. Some say despite being unable to drive out the Taliban, terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda and Daesh were eliminated. Claim these groups have not disappeared. They are resurgent and doubtless encouraged by the imminent departure of the last remaining Western forces. What happened in the Kabul airport last month is proof of their existence.
در کم باران رفته بودیم پشت ویزه آمریکا رفته بودیم اونجا شمال شرقی میدان هوایی انتقال بسیار شدید و بسیار کمی شد قاط مردم شد که تعداد زیادی امریکایی هم از بین رفتند و تعداد امریکایی هم اکثریتشون شهید زخمی شدند.
Violence still rages on in the country, with dozens of Afghans getting killed each year. Group Action on Armed Violence says 2020 saw more Afghans killed by explosive devices than in any other country in the world.
آرزوهای بسیار بلندی داشت و متاسفانه هزاران متاسفانه دیروز در حمله وحشیانه دشمنان وطن شهید شد و پسر بسیار لایق درسخوان زحمتکش.
Washington didn't manage to drive out the Taliban. Instead, the militant group is now introducing a new government. The occupation of Afghanistan, in fact, ended with the next Republican president, who cut a deal with the Taliban, and that president's Democratic successor then cited as the reason for the withdrawal. That successor, Joe Biden, and his administration have their own trail of false claims, including that the Taliban wouldn't return to power so quickly.
Is a Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable?
No, it is not. Because you have the Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force, against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
100% we lost the war. I mean, the Taliban already taken over one of the major passes like this week and getting money from this choke point of Tajikistan. So, and we're not even out yet. Like, the takeover, it's who's going to be there to stop them, you know, like, so the whole point was to get rid of the Taliban. We didn't do that. I mean, really make it really simple. Did we do that? No.
The current US administration was also confident that there would be no scenes like those in Vietnam, where a chaotic withdrawal required people to be airlifted from the US embassy in Saigon.
I remember standing in front of the American embassy in Saigon after the fall and having a young woman come up to me with her American identification card and saying, "They left me behind. They betrayed me. Why did they do this?" You see the same scenario playing out today.
A strikingly similar situation transpired. After the Taliban return, many Afghans kept asking themselves, wasn't the purpose of invasion the elimination of insurgency? The United States gave massive concessions to the Taliban, and at the end of the day, Washington recognized the group they once wanted to destroy. Observers believe by admitting the Taliban, the US is admitting its failure in Afghanistan.
We lost 20 years. We lost the war. We lost everything. As simple as that. And we have to go back. We will have to withdraw.
Now the situation is the same as it was 20 years ago. I'm not sure that spending 20 years there solved any problems at all.
20 years of war, and what the US government insisted to call nation building did not produce the aims that Washington was after. The reason is simple. Afghanistan's fate was never going to be determined by foreigners coming from thousands of miles away.